So I'm imagining Ethan Hawke's character in Reality Bites with a like banged up copy of Everything That Rises Must Converge in his back pocket. And that guy decided to make a movie about Flannery O'Connor. It's Wildcat.
Yes, directed by Ethan Hawke, co-written by Ethan Hawke, starring Ethan Hawke's daughter, Maya Hawke, who you may know from Stranger Things. She was also really good in Asteroid City last year. So a very talented young actress, no surprise at all, given who her parents are, but she's got her own cool presence as well. And a lot of depth and range she gets to show here. You guys subscribe to the channel because we will always do things like super artsy Ethan Hawke movies. Ethan Hawke likes to make movies about other artists, and that is what Wildcat is. So come hang out with us. We're hoping to reach 30,000 subscribers by the end of the summer. We would love to have you be a part of things around here.
I can never seem to escape myself unless I'm writing. And strangely, I'm never more myself than when I'm writing.
Wildcat. This is a movie that kind of grew on me. In the beginning of it, I was like, ooh, I'm not sure about this, because the way it is structured is Maya Hawke plays the writer Flannery O'Connor, but it's people from her own life who reappear in the imaginings of her writing. So as she is figuring out short stories and characters and dialogue and plot beats, people from her own life, including Laura Linney as her mom and various other characters, show up, and it's really distracting. There's a mannered kind of mania to the heightened nature of these performances. They're all incredible actors doing really eccentric, showy work in ways that are intended to show the blending of fiction and reality. The whole movie begins with a quote from Flannery O'Connor about how writing fiction is a version of reality. It's a diving into reality. It's not an escape
from reality. It's a plunge into reality.
Yeah. And so that is, I think, the guiding force here as far as blending her real life and her health struggles and her trying to, flee the conservative and super racist trappings of her Georgia childhood and go to New York and become an important writer. And so you have this back and forth of the stories coming to life with her appearing in them, with Laura Linney appearing in them. But then it's also this incredible supporting cast like Rafael Casal and Liam Neeson and Vincent D'Onofrio in the tiniest role, and Steve Zahn. And each new scene is like, oh wow, oh wow, look who's here now, and it's very exciting. Once it settles down from that structure, that very self-referential structure, and it's just about Flannery O'Connor struggling to find her place in the world and in literature, even as she struggles to reconcile her faith with the darker leanings of her writing, because she wrote about, in very vivid ways, people who were awful or were struggling or were profane or, not proper, nice Southern writing. Like her mom says to her at some point, when are you going to write something that people actually want to read?
That's one of my favorite lines.
It's a really funny line. But that's what made her writing so specific, was that she dared to delve into the deeper parts of our humanity and our character. And so when she gets a chance to really explore that in deep ways, I think it works. When it settles down and lets her just be this figure, it works. But a lot of that back and forth I found very distracting for a long time.
I get that they're trying for something different here. Like they didn't want to do just a straight up biopic, because then you're stuck with a lot of like, woman at typewriter kind of thing. And we've seen that movie a million times. We've seen also, I think, this attempt to like how the art informs the work, and the work informs the life, and the life informs the work. And I wish it were handled a little more gracefully, frankly. And the reason I put that word in quotes is because so much of this movie is about her pursuit of grace, of God's grace as a conflicted Catholic. And we know this because she says it over and over again. Like, this is not a movie that lets you glean anything. They're constantly telling you what she's about and what she means and what she thinks and what she wants. And so I found that a little overbearing. Also, there's a really good documentary called Flannery that premiered on PBS a year or two ago. And it gives you, I think, a much more balanced portrait, because Flannery O'Connor's relationship with race is a little more complicated than this movie shows it. You get this idea of like, she's sort of embarrassed by her mother and the sort of, the kind of genteel Southern racism. But Flannery O'Connor herself was kind of like believed in civil rights theoretically, but personally did not want to be around black people. Like, had kind of, again, a product of her time and place. But the movie skirts that and makes her seem a lot more, progressive in that extent, and as though we couldn't handle like juggling these, contradictory ideas about a complicated woman. I think she is a complicated woman that this movie is trying to simplify, and that is ultimately where I found it kind of lacking. The Southern accents are a little wimbly wombly. Like sometimes they really nail it, and other times it kind of, and I grew up in Georgia, so I have a little, I don't necessarily do one, but I have an ear for them, I think.
Yeah, you know that. But I wonder if part of that too is intentional, because some of the Laura Linney roles in particular are so over the top and grotesque that maybe it's meant to be a parody of a bad Southern accent. That's my one guess.
I mean, maybe, but I think you could believe me. The women that she's portraying had genuine Southern accents and were still grotesque caricatures, So, like, I don't know. We can make that the excuse if we want. I admire what they're going for here, but more often than not, I just found it kind of lead-footed.
Yeah. And maybe in real life, Flannery O'Connor did feel the need to explain herself all the time as somebody who was misunderstood and was like, shoved into this bubble that she didn't feel like she belonged in. And so maybe that's true, but it is kind of clunky in a cinematic expression of a life. But then there are moments that I thought really worked, like even in the briefest of scenes with Alessandro Nivola as her editor, her potential editor. Some of the stuff with Philip Ettinger as a fellow writer who she really looks up to and possibly more. Like that's a nice chemistry. And then Cooper Hoffman, it's just an incredible supporting cast here. Cooper Hoffman is there in the one little vignette that has true tension, right? By that point, there feels like there's an emotional truth to it that is lacking in the showier, earlier excerpts from her work. Like, you feel scared for this character in that later segment.
And it's also, I think, one of the few stories that you get a full sense of the full arc of it. A lot of the other ones kind of feel like snippets of like, moments of a larger story that they don't quite complete. Whereas that one, you do get the full arc of it. Again, this is that thing we always talk about when actors become directors, you can tell who's got a lot of people on their phone, based on like who they can get to show up for a day or two, we can get Liam Neeson Tuesday, And why not? Like if you can, you should. And if you've got, and these folks are doing good work, they're not like just kind of showing up and slumming it or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I admire the intent of this movie. I think they are trying to wrap their arms around not only a complicated literary figure, but also a complicated literary body of work, neither of which I think easily loans itself to the kind of movie that they're seeking to make here. And I think if you are going to try and do either of those things, let alone both of them, you would maybe need to be a little less, I don't know. I think you would need to trust the audience more and let things be a little more vague and human feeling rather than just sort of like here and this and then this and then this and we're telling you all the things.
Yes. What's your number then?
I'm going to say like a 5.5. I mean, there's a lot that I admire here, and again, and certainly the intent, and the period detail is great, and this feels like they had a lot of resources that they made the most of, and definitely the way that they portray the small town south of the 40s, like. I saw the last vestiges of that growing up in the 70s, but definitely some of those like houses on bricks and things, looked very familiar. So there's a lot that I liked here, but it didn't sell me on it.
I'm right there with you. I'm like 5.3. Like it's a little better than halfway, like a little better than 2 stars. So Wildcat is in theaters on May 3rd. We're a little bit early on it. So let us know if you see it.